"Be so disciplined it scares people" isn't a slogan for stone faces. It's a way of moving through real life that turns noise into background and turns your word into a structure you can climb no matter the weather. If it makes people uneasy, it's not because you're trying to intimidate anyone. It's because they recognize a standard that doesn't bend for mood, applause, or panic. It's like seeing a lighthouse that never blinks. You can deny the rocks all you want, but that light keeps telling the truth. Discipline at this level isn't a personality quirk. It's built the way a seawall is built, stone by stone, tide after tide, using mortar mixed from small promises kept when no one is watching. It starts with decisions that are simpler, smaller, and stricter than your mind prefers. Think of the screen printer who bikes to the shop before sunup, even in the rain, because the presses need a slow, exact warm-up, or the ink won't set right. He unlocks the door at 4, flips one bulb, and begins a sequence his body knows better than any clock. Fill, stir, pause, test, adjust. When a storm knocks the power out, he pulls a backup handle and keeps the rollers moving by hand. No speech, no drama, just the next correct action. Across town, a concert pianist practices in a windowless room with a scuffed upright and buzzing fluorescents. The show is months away. She plays scales at the speed a beginner would use, placing each finger like a bricklayer setting tile. Then she works a single measure for an hour. Not because she loves that measure, but because she knows it's the gate that keeps people out. This is security for the future performance being installed into her nerves in a room nobody will ever see. She doesn't check in with her feelings to see if she feels like it. She made one decision earlier, and now that decision moves her hands. In a farming valley where flood and drought take turns being the villain, a grower walks his fields each evening with a cheap notebook. He pushes a finger into the dirt to knuckle depth, tastes the wind for direction, notes the water height at the inlet, and writes down 3 numbers. He's done that for 30 years. When neighbors guess, he flips to a page from a similar season and reads signs that say, "Rain is coming in 2 weeks." It looks like luck to outsiders. It's not luck. It's attention stacked quietly over time. And stacking is a form of discipline that doesn't care if anyone claps. There's a swimmer who swims when she says she will, even when the pool smells like chlorine and the air outside smells like metal. She doesn't stand on the deck and bargain with herself about tomorrow. She isn't making up later for what she planned now. She steps into the water like a contract signing itself, because discipline begins where negotiation ends. Then she leaves on time. She could chase one more interval. She doesn't. Overspending often masquerades as virtue, and then sends the bill to your joints. Starting when planned is scary to some people. Stopping when planned frightens them just as much, because both prove rules can steer desire. In a small machine shop, a tech repeats a calibration ritual that would drain most people's patience. He checks the diameter with a micrometer, wipes the surface, checks again, and pencils the variance in a paper ledger that has outlived 3 software systems. No boss told him he had to do all that. He does it because he likes sleeping. Sleep belongs to people with nothing unmeasured nagging them. In the ledger, discipline shows up as numbers drifting toward exactness. In his face, discipline shows up as an absence of flinch. A teacher working inside a prison prints weekly packets on a wheezing copier, sharpens 10 pencils to the same length, and locks the classroom door exactly when the wall clock says to. She never yells. She asks the loudest guy to read one paragraph out loud, then asks him to read it again, slower, with breath on commas. She holds the line for the comma the way a dam holds back water. Months later, men who rolled their eyes start to write letters that don't stumble. She didn't sneak in miracle cures. She smuggled a metronome into their sentences. If discipline were just private routines, it would be a hobby. Its real power is public. It is the habit of limiting your choices in advance so you don't have to be a hero at noon. You act as a lawmaker for your future self. Pass small laws with a quorum of 1, and enforce them with penalties that fit your real body, not the legend you wish you had. The penalties aren't dramatic. They're simply the refusal to move a boundary by an inch. In an editing suite, a documentary producer tapes a giant schedule to the wall, boxes every cut, and checks boxes in order, even when a clever shortcut winks at them. The finished film looks inevitable, because the work that built it refused to flirt. There's a toughness baked into lives like this, and it isn't cruelty. It's the refusal to outsource identity to randomness. A photojournalist who covers hurricanes stocks batteries, tarps, and maps long before the season starts. When the wind arrives, his hands look boring. Boring hands in wild weather make pictures that tell the truth instead of adrenaline. What unsettles spectators is how this way of living exposes the lie about time. The disciplined person seems to move slowly until you do the math on a year and see how much flows through a pipe that never clogs. A choreographer who writes 15 counts every day lays a full show on the floor by spring. A neighborhood gardener who weeds for 30 minutes at dawn gives a whole block clean edges by July. A translator who quietly knocks out 2 pages of a thorny book every day arrives at finished volumes while other people are still making announcements. Many disciplines are invisible because they happen in the dark. A power plant tech climbs 100 rungs on a night shift, presses a metal rod to a bearing, and listens like a musician naming pitches. She swaps a part a week early. The city never notices because the city never goes black. The city's ignorance is proof her discipline is working. The more solid your scaffolding gets, the more people will try, often kindly, to get you to soften it. There's an etiquette of compromise that pretends to be kindness and shows up with a friendly smile. People who oversleep invite you to be late as a gesture of solidarity. People who push things forever invite you to push too. Saying flexibility is a virtue. You don't have to preach. I can't is enough, when what you mean is, I don't. Let the small laws hold. Then there are seasons when the frame cracks. A violinist breaks a wrist. A call center lead loses half her team in a week. A parent gets sick. Full-strength discipline includes the plan for when the plan fails. The violinist hums scales and claps rhythms one-handed so time stays sharp. The team lead cuts the backlog into cards with verbs and moves 3 a day, even if last month she moved 30. The caretaker draws a line around 15 minutes of reading each night and defends it as if the rest of the day hangs on it, because it does. Some crafts dress discipline in ritual because ritual helps the body remember. A glassblower taps the door of the annealer 3 times with a knuckle before opening it, so no frantic day overrides a safety habit. A glider pilot speaks the checklist out loud even alone, so when the radio crackles, the mouth keeps its order. A circulating nurse lays tools on a tray in the same order every time, left to right, small to large, not for aesthetics, but so her hand doesn't hunt in a storm. If you want to test your seriousness, look at what you measure. If you only count outcomes, discipline will feel like a bully when outcomes slip. Count inputs. Count words written, calls made, pages learned cold, hours slept, miles covered at a pace you can keep. Track the refusals to break the chain more than you track streaks. Streaks crash. Refusals last. There's a chess player who logs good losses, those games where he followed the plan even when a stronger opponent punched through. His rating rises because his habit rises. Results are just shadows following his feet. Words matter because words are the operating system of your nerves. Promise yourself, maybe, and you program delay. Promise yourself, unless I'm dead or caring for the dying, and you program execution. A novelist writes 1 honest page every day, even on days when hope feels like a rumor. She doesn't allow herself to tear down her own work out loud. She keeps adjectives on a leash. She forgives everything except the day she misses because she's standing in a hospital hallway. She fears one thing: the day the page stops being non-negotiable. Watch what happens to the reputation of disciplined people. First, they're mocked. Then, they're tolerated as strange. Then, they're asked for help. Then they're resented because their steadiness throws back a mirror. Resentment is often the final exam. If you can stay courteous without loosening your rules, your discipline graduates from private scaffolding to a public good. A museum conservator who refuses to rush the humidification of a 13th century page will make donors mad who want a gala on a deadline. Those same donors later brag about the piece that survived a heat wave because it wasn't hurried. Fear of boredom ruins more lives than fear of failure. Disciplined people treat boredom like a forge. A junior engineer rewrites a scraping script in 3 languages. The boredom irons out kinks in his thinking. A pathologist practices knots with string for an hour a day, so tying off vessels becomes a prayer in the muscle. A lab head rereads 10 landmark papers every January. The boredom filters out fads. There's loneliness in this, and it's part of the price. Not everyone will hang around while you do the dull work that makes bright work possible. Discipline misuses shame and uses pride carefully. Shame is gasoline poured in the wrong engine. Pride should be treated like salt. A weightlifter who tapes medals above the desk lets yesterday hypnotize today. A better sign is the small smile when a simple plan clicks. The orchestra librarian who ends rehearsal on time and leaves the hall unlocked for the custodian walks home with warm shoulders that feel like decency. That's right-sized pride. You did what you said you'd do, and the world got 1 notch tidier. If you want your discipline to be the useful kind, the kind people quietly lean on, you also learn to be precise about rest. The laziest minutes in a disciplined life are the most guarded. A block of sleep is defended the way a jeweler guards a safe. A rower lies down every day at 1 for 20 minutes. Lights off, phone out of reach, alarm set. After he moves like a different person. The rest isn't a treat. It's part of the machine. People who confuse rest with indulgence never get consistent because they never learn to refuel without lying to themselves. Another key is the audit that stings. Once a month, a restaurant owner eats at his own bar without saying who he is. He tastes the soup and writes flat. He watches whether servers glance at their phones when they think no one is looking and writes drift. He checks the bathroom at 9 and writes paper towels low. The next morning there's a note about salt, a move of a box from kitchen to bar, a reminder that the line between excellent and sloppy is a staircase most people slide down without noticing. People call this obsessive until they taste the difference. Some folks say discipline is rigid. Wrong word. Oak is rigid and snaps. Willow is disciplined and bends on schedule. A dance company blocks time for improvisation. A software team keeps a standing Friday block for experiments that might never ship. A hospital writes a protocol for how to drop protocols when a truly new surge hits. The discipline that can't flex is just vanity in uniform. The real thing rehearses its own exceptions in advance, so when the tornado comes, the frame bends exactly where it was designed to. Below all the career talk, there's a deeper layer. Housekeeping for the soul. You decide what you will and won't do when nobody could catch you. A commuter gives up the private thrill of easing through yellow lights. A teenager decides never to lie about curfew time. An older woman stops complaining about weather. These are plain rules. They're also how a person becomes quietly frightening in the moral sense, because they remove the wiggle room where you might admire yourself for breaking your word cleverly. There will be days you feel like a fraud. When that happens, shrink the horizon and move 1 piece. A registrar moves 1 crate. A translator moves 1 paragraph. A nurse on a double shift moves 1 cup of water to 1 shaky hand. Your mind hates this smallness. Your body is grateful because the body understands motion is true and intention is just rumor. After 1 piece moves, you have proof. Proof shuts up the voice that says you can only move if the mood is perfect. When you live this way, people sometimes step aside in hallways. They lower their voices without knowing why. It's not because you scowl. It's because they sense the absence of backroom bargaining, and bargaining is the invisible oil that greases most social life. Take it away, and friction returns to the right place. not between you and them, but between them and their unmade decision. Your presence becomes an accelerant for other people's choices. They may dislike you for that. You don't need their approval to keep your laws. Discipline curdles into cruelty when it becomes a performance. Don't post your numbers to shame co-workers. Don't brag about how early your alarm rings. Don't try to sell your ritual like a shortcut in a box. Teach if asked. Otherwise, tend the fire and let the heat speak. The forensic tech who cleans tools after every case and lines them at the same angle on the mat doesn't need to explain why her bench is ready when alarms go off. Discipline shows itself as readiness, not as a speech. If you want one sentence that carries, use this. Make the plan easier to obey than to break. That's the engineering problem. Lay out your clothes the night before, so morning greets you with a mannequin wearing your day. Leave your instrument on a stand in the middle of the room, so breakfast runs into strings. Put the book on your pillow, so bedtime brushes paper. Silence the alerts that nibble your day. Add a finger's width of friction to a vice, and remove the same from a virtue. Make the next right move the path of least resistance. When the groove gets deep, your calendar stops looking like an enemy. It looks like a dam that releases water on schedule. You become less sentimental about your own feelings. You treat them like weather reports, worth reading, bad to worship. You practice listening to feelings without hiring them as bosses. You learn a tone that respects people while insisting on a tempo that protects the work. You stop apologizing for boundaries and start thanking people for the invitations you can accept without torching your map. Eventually, people come near to borrow your stability. They'll ask how you stay motivated, and you'll smile because that's not the right noun anymore. You moved the nouns around a long time ago. Now the right ones are appointment, repetition, threshold, refusal, inventory, recovery. You show them your notebook, columns for inputs, circles around the non-negotiables, margins filled with notes about sleep like a lover's name. Then you tell them the answer they won't like. The answer is that you made one choice once and then made it again every day until the choice became the floor. From that floor, you built rooms. Keep going, and your pace becomes weather for other people. The way the printer's reliability becomes weather for a neighborhood. Projects look for you because rails hold. Crises get smaller around you because you don't add static. Your home starts to feel like a clock that hums instead of clicks. On the day you miss, because everyone misses, you'll know exactly how to get back on the rails, not with beating yourself up, but with the same sentence the swimmer uses when she stands at the edge of the pool. Begin where you are. Missing is an event, not an identity. Modern life gives you plenty of places to practice. A barista opens the cafe at 5 even when the rideshare is late, and the espresso machine throws an error because customers will still push the door at 6. A cloud ops engineer updates playbooks after each on-call incident, so the next alert is handled by muscle rather than panic. A nurse puts on their badge at 6:58 because rounds start at 7, whether they feel centered or not. A small bakery closes pre-orders at noon, even when DMs beg for more, because quality tanks when sleep does. A logistics manager sets a daily no-meeting wall and defends it, so the warehouse runs on process instead of adrenaline. A parent starts bedtime at 8, because 9 becomes 10, and 10 turns into tears. These aren't grand gestures. They are stone on stone. There's discipline in how you talk to yourself. Instead of, "I'll try," you say, "At 7:30, I start." Instead of, "If everything goes right," you say, "Here's what I control." Instead of, "I blew it," you say, "I missed a rep. Next rep starts now." Words are switches. Flip the wrong one, and you sit in a dark room telling yourself stories about wiring. Flip the right one and the light turns on, not because magic arrived, but because electricity moves where you told it to. There's discipline in who you spend time with. You don't need saints, but you do need people whose habits don't sabotage yours. You get a friend who texts, "Jim," at 6 and doesn't lobby when you say yes. You keep a coworker who ships drafts on Tuesday because drafts on Tuesday save Fridays. You take a walk with someone who talks about what they're building more than what they're tearing down. You don't announce a breakup with chaos. You simply don't put chaos on the calendar. There's discipline in money, not just in saving, but in spending on rails that reduce future thrash. You buy the decent pan once and stop shopping for pans. You pay for a calendar that syncs across devices so your appointments stop wandering. You fix the tire before it explodes on the freeway. You treat generosity as a line item you never skip, because hoarding shrinks you and giving keeps you accurate about scale. There's discipline in quitting, not at the first difficulty, but at the right one. You stop doubling down on a project that sucks energy and refuses to learn. You stop arguing with people who enjoy fighting more than learning. You stop collecting tools for a hobby you don't touch. Quitting is not betrayal when it protects the core promise you've made to your life. There's discipline in the way you face setbacks. A startup launches and nobody cares. The founder doesn't open a thread begging for sympathy. She tightens the loop, talks to 10 users, ships one fix, repeats. A runner gets injured. He cross-trains and learns to love the bike, not because he likes biking, but because he respects being the kind of person who keeps agreements with sweat. A student fails an exam. They don't write a manifesto about unfairness. They rebuild a routine. 2 hours in the library, phone in a bag, practice problems until the floor holds. There's discipline in kindness, not softness, the kind that actually helps. You tell a friend the truth in a sentence they can carry. You answer emails with clear subjects and short bodies because you respect other people's bandwidth. You show up 5 minutes early because late scatters the day for everyone else. You don't make your emergency other people's emergency by default. This isn't stiffness, it's basic care. There's discipline in joy. You don't postpone it until someday. You schedule it. You make the picnic happen on a Saturday with grocery store bread because waiting for the perfect baguette turns into never. You play the song on a Tuesday night at low volume and dance with the dog because energy compounds, whether you spend it on gloom or on a grin. You learn that humor is a renewable resource when used kindly. There's discipline in grief. You don't try to tidy it up. You give it a chair in the room. You spend the 20 minutes crying. Then you wash your face and make soup. The plan doesn't evaporate when life breaks your heart. It just runs slower. You do the next right thing at a human pace and call that a win. There's discipline in endings. You don't ghost people who hired you. You send the closing email. You return the equipment. You say thank you without adding a paragraph of excuses. You don't slam doors that you might need later. You let your work be the last word. There's discipline in beginnings. You make your first day of a new habit laughably small on purpose. A 5-minute walk, 1 push-up, 1 paragraph, 1 page, 1 practice scale. Because what you are really training is your identity, not your ego. You teach your brain that you are the sort of person who starts when they say they will. Once that identity hardens, the reps can grow. The world is noisy with ambition that fizzles and resolutions that dissolve. What doesn't dissolve is the unglamorous habit that shows up in the dark, measures what can be measured, moves one piece, and protects the quiet engine of rest. Be so disciplined it scares people, and you won't need a brand. The work will point at you. The calendar will testify. The tools will lie ready like loyal animals. Your body will belong to you again, not to your whims. People who hoped your standard was a phase will learn to live under the weather you carry, because weather like that doesn't ask permission. It builds and holds and shapes a shoreline where there used to be fog. You will still have ordinary days. That's the point. Ordinary steps taken on schedule pile up into floors other people can stand on. That's the secret gravity of discipline. It looks small until the structure exists. It looks quiet until people realize the room is standing because someone kept promises that no one else noticed. And if they feel a little nervous around you, that's not a problem you need to fix. That nerves prickle is recognition. They see the lighthouse. They see the rocks. They see that the light will keep shining whether anyone likes it or not. Keep it shining. Keep it simple. Keep it steady. The weather will do what it does. You'll have your scaffolding either way.